Hey, welcome. So today we're going to dive into a pretty big idea. What if reason wasn't just a tool for, figuring things out, but was actually a compass for living, a guide for literally every decision we make? Let's get into it. And it all really boils down to this one question. Can reason have a religion? Now, I don't mean religion in the traditional sense with scripture and deities. No, we're talking about something different, a guiding set of principles that you live by. And that's the core idea we're going to unpack together today. So, what in the world is a religion of reason? Well, think of it like this. It's a system where your rational mind isn't just for solving math problems or winning arguments. It becomes the ultimate guide for your thoughts and, more importantly, your moral actions. It's kind of like writing your own personal constitution for an ethical life. Okay, so what are the building blocks of this whole thing? It turns out there are 5 core tenets. You could call them the essential rules of rational ethics. These are the very foundation upon which everything else is built. Let's walk through them. First up, the absolute bedrock of it all is the ability to distinguish right from wrong. Simple to say, harder to do. Second, once you've actually identified something as wrong, you have to actively reject it. No sitting on the fence. Third, it's not enough to just reject it. You've got to take corrective action. Fourth is the backbone of all integrity. Speak only the truth. And finally, the 5th tenet. And this might be the toughest of them all, is to persist in what is right no matter what obstacles get thrown in your way. And here's where we see the real philosophical weight of these ideas. Think of these tenets as building a kind of moral tower. Distinguishing right from wrong, well, that's just critical thinking in action. But rejecting what's wrong, that's you stepping up, no longer a passive observer, and taking a clear moral position. Taking corrective action, that's the magic moment you turn abstract knowledge into real-world responsibility. Speaking the truth, that's the foundation of all trust, right? And persisting in what's right, that, my friends, is the ultimate virtue. That's about defending truth against any and all challenges. So understanding these principles is one thing, right? We can nod along and say, yeah, that makes sense. But the real struggle, the real challenge, begins the moment we try to actually apply them in our lives. Let's talk about that gap, why it's so tough to move from theory to practice. We can actually sort these 5 tenets into 2 very different buckets, knowing and doing. On one side, distinguishing right from wrong and even speaking the truth, those are mostly intellectual efforts. They are acts of knowing. But rejecting what's wrong, taking corrective action, and persisting in the right, whoa, those require willpower, courage, sacrifice. They are acts of doing. And that's the gap we all face every single day. The cost of doing is almost always higher than the comfort of simply knowing. And this really gets to the very heart of the challenge. See, knowledge can be passive. You can know something and just sit with it. But action is where the friction is. It's in the persistence, that willingness to sacrifice your comfort, maybe risk some opposition. That's where this philosophy truly comes to life. All right, so we have the what, we understand the philosophy, but now we get to the really crucial part, the how. How do we actually apply this stuff in our day-to-day lives? How do we make it real? Let's really zero in on that first foundational tenet, distinguishing right from wrong. Because if we can't get that right, the rest of the tower falls apart. And there's a tangible, step-by-step method that we can actually use to do just that. And here it is, a surprisingly straightforward 4-step method. Question, research, discuss, and then, finally, conclude. I want you to think of this as a practical roadmap, a mental toolkit for reaching a sound judgment about anything. Okay, let's break this down. It all starts with questioning. You hear something and you ask, is this really true? And how do they know that? This naturally leads you to research, where you start looking for evidence and, critically, you check how reliable your sources are. The 3rd step, discuss, is all about filtering that evidence through logic. You can do this in your own head or talk it out with others, always looking for those pesky contradictions. Only then can you begin to form a conclusion. But wait, arriving at a conclusion isn't the final step, not by a long shot. That conclusion has to pass 3 crucial tests. First, is it true? Second, is it just? And third, is it immutable? Now, immutability is a key idea here. It just means your conclusion is firm, but it's not dogmatic. It stands strong until, and only until, new compelling evidence comes along that proves it wrong. Only a conclusion that passes all 3 of these filters can be considered truly sound. So we have the philosophy, the 5 tenets, and we have a practical method for finding truth. So how do we bring it all together into a personal roadmap that we can use for our own lives? This is where you can take all these ideas, the 5 tenets, the 4-step method, and combine them to create your very own personal manifesto of reason. It essentially becomes this powerful internal compass for navigating all of life's decisions, from the tiny ones to the massive ones. So why does any of this matter? Why go to the trouble? Well, a manifesto like this isn't just a tool for your own personal growth. It can actually lay the foundation for a more rational society because it centers your life on 2 key things: wisdom, that's knowing what's right, and virtue, that's actually doing what's right. But of course, choosing a path like this, it's not easy. It demands constant intellectual and moral alertness. So as we wrap this up, I want to turn the question back to you. If you sat down today to write your own manifesto of reason, what would be your number 1, your first, absolutely non-negotiable principle? The one thing you would never, ever compromise on? Something to think about.